Welcome to the SicEm365 Baseball Podcast with Levi Caraway. Presented by T&G Chemical and Supply. Let us be your one-stop shop for all of your business supplies at 3328 Franklin Avenue in Waco. Serving Central Texas since 1967.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the SicEm365 Baseball Podcast. This week, I'll kind of talk about the recap of the West Virginia series, the game against UTA, and the huge series against TCU this weekend. First, I want to thank Mark George and our sponsors at T&G Chemical for making this happen. It's awesome to have that sponsorship and make this a little more official. And even though we have a small fan base, I appreciate that at times. And so, starting with Friday night against the trip to Morgantown, going into this series, it was always going to be Baylor's probably not going to win the 3-game set, but they needed to take one game. They really needed to take a game, especially after losing that series to Kansas at home the weekend before. For Big 12 standings, it was really important to not get swept, and unfortunately that didn't happen. In the first inning, 3 at-bats into the game, Baylor's star slugger, Wesley Jordan, who just extended his on-base streak to 30 games, second Bear to do that since Davis Wenzel in the last decade, gets beamed in the helmet by a fastball, immediately removed for the game, presumably for a concussion. Didn't return at any point that weekend. So as soon as he goes down, the wind kind of goes out of the sails. Mason Marriott has his worst outing of the year, allows up eight runs, doesn't even get out of the second inning. Just from that point, it was just an onslaught. Ended up losing 18-5 on Friday night. Ended up getting outscored in the series, 36-11. Saturday's contest, a little more respectable of a score, 5-2. Nothing was really getting going offensively. Sunday, 13-4. And they actually Baylor was leading this game going into the bottom of the 5th. But the problem in this game and throughout the weekend was the free passes. And over the weekend, Baylor's pitching staff combined to issue 21 walks and hit 9 batters, a season high. In the previous weekend against Kansas, they allowed 22 walks. So they're basically averaging a free pass an inning. And the problem with this is, these young pitchers, I don't want to say maybe they are hitting a wall because they've never gone through a season that's been this long. I've told you all about that a little bit last week, but the ugly walks and hit batters it's been such an issue the past 2 years has really reared its head these past 2 weeks. And that's a huge reason because Baylor's offense, when you're down 4 or 5 runs, it's basically a death sentence just because of the injuries they sustained and whatnot. And then you take Wesley Jordan out of the equation, who didn't even play on Tuesday night either. And I'll get into him in a little bit. But without Wes, that little 4 or 5 runs probably goes down to 2-3. They're just not good enough. And so the pitching staff has to be on their A game. That puts more pressure on those young guys and the unproven guys. And it's just a mess. And so during this 5-game losing streak in conference play, the pitching staff has surrendered 45 earned runs and 36 walks in 41 innings. That's not including hit by pitches. The freshman arms in particular have allowed 20 earned runs and 15 walks across 17.2 frames. And the freshmen have more or less pitched 50% of the innings this year. And I think there's a lot of optimism for what they can be in the future. Look at a leap like a guy like Ethan Calder had from his freshman to sophomore year, who got a ton of experience on the mound, but didn't have the best stats-wise. But then his sophomore year made an incredible leap, and he's been one of the best relievers in the Big 12, even though he started on Sunday because they took Mason Green out of the starting rotation, and we'll see what they do this weekend against TCU. But my point being, Ethan Calder made a huge jump, and hopefully there's going to be some similar things with some of these guys like Ruway and Mason Green and Steven Sepulveda and whatnot. But it's a real issue right now, and they have no chance against TCU if they're going to be walking a batter per inning. That's just unrealistic, and especially in college baseball, it's way different to force a team to hit 3 singles and score a run as opposed to a hit by pitch, wild pitch advances the runner to second base, a sac fly gets the guy to third. It's not technically a sac fly, but fly out, deep fly to center, gets the guy to third base, and then a ground at the shortstop scores the run. That's totally different than a couple of hits in an inning. And at some point, you just got to make guys beat you, and they're not doing that right now, and that's going to be critical this weekend. So then on Tuesday, they return home with a 5-3 win over UT Arlington. Pitching staff it only allowed 6 hits, but, again, 4 walks, 5 hit by pitches. Jared Matheson started the game through 3 innings, allowed 1 run, 0 hits, 2 walks, 3 hit batters. Just crazy up and down. You never knew where the ball was going to go. But they ended up getting back on track, getting a win. Currently at 20-23 in the standings. But the story of this game was Cole Posey, who was 4 for 4, double shy of the cycle. And in his last 2 games, Cole is 7 for 7 with 3 home runs. Had 2 home runs in this game. 2 home runs on Sunday against West Virginia, home run in this game. And he's been a revelation. Such a tough position coming off the bench, and not expected to play much this year because of injuries. And he was thrust into an impromptu tryout at first base not too long ago, and he ended up winning that job. And it's just been great ever since then. So shout out to him. It's really tough to come off the bench and be that productive but he's a 5th-year guy. He has the experience. He's been through the ups and downs of college baseball, but really good story and whatnot. And so I'll kind of talk about some negatives over the weekend in just a second. But first, I'll take a little commercial break from our sponsors at T&G Chemical.
T&G can, and here's why.
To say my wife and I have a lot to clean is an understatement. So we go to T&G Chemical, where the pros know what cleaning solutions to use and give us detailed instructions on exactly how to use them. We never got that kind of advice from any other stores. And the prices at T&G are great. From general household cleaners to odor control solutions for our pets. We go to T&G Chemical and Supply. That's why.
T&G Chemical and Supply. That's why.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Obviously, I'll start with the negatives. And the story this past week was Wesley Jordan being removed from Friday's game with a concussion after getting hit with a 95-mile-per-hour fastball right here in the temple. So unfortunate. Just, these injuries have been such an issue for Baylor this season, and losing a guy like Wes, you just can't replace him in the lineup. And, he missed Tuesday. I don't really expect him to play this weekend. I would imagine he's going to be questionable, and saying that he would play Saturday or Sunday is probably on the optimistic side. I think you go into this series expecting him not to play, and if he gives you anything, awesome. But who knows if he's going to be ready, because it's a week of not swinging a bat, week of not doing really much because you're in concussion protocol and whatnot. And so going to be an unfortunate blow for Baylor's offense this weekend. So that puts all the more pressure on the pitching staff. And like I mentioned, these free passes have absolutely killed this team the past 2 weeks. And if they want any chance at winning this series this weekend against rival TCU, it's going to be on the back of its pitching staff. And they can't walk people, they can't hit people, because if that's the case, they're going to lose. And so for Big 12 standings wise, Baylor is currently 9-12. TCU is 10-14. So TCU only has 1 series left after this weekend against West Virginia at home. Baylor will go to Norman to face OU, who's currently ranked in the top 25, lead top of the Big 12 at 15-6. And they'll welcome UCF in the final week of the season. And this series is huge. I mean, whoever wins this between Baylor and TCU has the easiest path to make the Big 12 tournament. As a reminder, this year it's 10 of the 13 teams make the tournament. Houston and BYU have separated themselves at the bottom. Right now, it's kind of a race between quite a few teams, but it'll more than likely end up between UCF, Baylor, and TCU for those final 2 spots. And whoever wins this weekend is going to have the easiest path for sure. And the thing about TCU is we're ranked as high as number 3 nationally this season. Had huge expectations. They were predicted to finish first in the conference according to D1, according to the coaches, and they had a great non-con. I think they started like 15-0, 16-0 or something, and then once Big 12 play, they just absolutely collapsed. They're sitting at 10-14, like I mentioned, and it just hasn't clicked for whatever reason. The transfers they brought in haven't been up to par as what they probably expected, but by no means are they a bad team. They're very talented, and just for whatever reason, it hasn't clicked. And I think a lot of Baylor fans know that typically this time of the year, TCU just starts to get going. They just find ways to win games in April and May, and last year that was evident when they made a pretty impromptu run to Omaha, and we're one of the, believe Final Four teams left in the whole thing. And I don't think that's going to happen this year, but they're still a very dangerous team. They're still very lethal. I would not sleep on this team, and not like Baylor will or anything. But this is going to be a huge weekend, and it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds, especially with Wes Jordan probably being out for Baylor. It's going to be Mason Marriott and Colin McKinney are going to have really good outings, and particularly with TCU, their offense hasn't been great this season, kind of toward the bottom of the Big 12 in that regard. 267 batting average, which is 12th, but they have really good pitching staff. 4.6 ERA, 4th in the Big 12, really good fielding percentage, 2nd in the Big 12. So Baylor can't afford to walk people, like I just keep mentioning. Baylor can't afford to make mistakes on defense. It's going to take a combined effort from everybody this weekend to get this series win, and I don't know if they're going to do it. I mean, this is I feel like it's a last stand in a way, because you're not going to beat OU and Norman. I mean, you might steal one game, but if West Virginia was any indication, I don't think it's going to be good up there. And so you're basically putting all your pressure on this series and winning against UCF. And so it starts with this one. Obviously, this team, every time, I've mentioned this too before in the past, like every time you think they're dead or every time you want to pronounce like this team is cooked or whatever, like they come out and beat a pretty competent opponent. So we'll see what Baylor has left in the tank. Huge weekend for everybody. And obviously, if Baylor were to miss the Big 12 tournament, I'm not saying this weekend is elimination. It would just make it it would make it a very difficult path. They lost this series this weekend to get back, barring like a collapse from UCF or something. But obviously, if Baylor were to miss the Big 12 tournament for back-to-back years, it'd be a huge disappointment. It would be pretty embarrassing, honestly. Can't really ride momentum into the offseason if you're sitting at home in late May and whatnot. And TCU, like, they had NCAA tournament aspirations. They probably had Omaha aspirations, honestly. And so for them not to make the Big 12 tournament would be super embarrassing. So they're going to be doing everything they can to win this weekend series, and they know it's a rivalry and whatnot. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this weekend. Should have some beautiful weather on some days. Some days it might be raining. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but yeah, stay tuned and subscribe to SicEm365 Premium as the season winds down. I'll be kind of the leader in coverage for the offseason transfer portal and whatnot. We'll also have game threads every day for our games, and every week or two, I try to do a feature story and just kind of a little update on where the team is, as well as game recaps. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and whatnot, and I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you.
TNG can, and here's why.
I gotta say, running a small business can be tough. As a professional, keeping my place clean for employees and customers can feel like a full-time job. That's why I trust the pros at TNG Chemical and Supply for all my supplies. And now my business stays clean, and I'm surprised how much less I'm spending each month on cleaning and maintenance. Now I can even save on products from TNG Chemical for my home. TNG Chemical and Supply. That's why.
TNG